I never imagined that a simple proposal would change my life forever. It all started with a game, a fantasy I thought I was in control of, two lovers, a boyfriend willing to do anything, and me at the center of a desire that seemed insatiable. But what started as a hot night ended in betrayal, exposed secrets, and a revenge that never lives to go. Do you want to know how far it all went? Stick with me because this story is full of details that will make you think deeply. Hit like if you feel like this is about to ignite. Comment if you ever played with fire and subscribe now. Because what I'm about to tell you is not just a story. It's a lesson you'll never forget. My name is Nerea. I'm 25 years old, and until recently I lived in Los Angeles with what many would call a perfect life. I had a steady boyfriend, Ismail, a quiet and dedicated guy, but he also had a secret, one that even I didn't fully understand, but one that gradually consumed me. I loved to walk on the edge of the abyss, to feel the adrenaline of the forbidden. The story I am about to tell you is not an easy one. It is the story of how I sank completely. But it is also the story of how I found the courage to start again. You may wonder why I am doing this. It's because I want you to know what it was like to be there, how it feels when everything you think you control turns against you. It all started one ordinary morning, with the sun streaming through the windows of our small apartment in downtown Los Angeles. Ismail was sitting on the couch, checking his phone. I was pouring myself coffee when my cell phone vibrated. It was a text from Elias, his coworker. Elias was, well, hard to describe. Tall, dark, with a smile that always seemed to be making fun of something. I had met him at one of the company dinners, and since then we had crossed the line more times than I care to admit. "Hey, I've got a proposition you're going to love," his message said. My pulse raced. It wasn't the first time Elias had proposed something crazy, but this time I felt it was going to be different. I was barely processing the message when I received another one. This time it was Hugo. Hugo and I had had a thing months before. Even before Ismail and I formalized our relationship. It was intense, short, and I didn't think we'd ever cross paths again, but there was his message. "You're coming tonight. I have the house free and I've been thinking about you all day." I bit my lip, feeling that familiar tingle of excitement mixed with guilt. I had to choose, or maybe I didn't. Maybe I could have it all. The idea began to form in my mind almost immediately. I approached Ismail, who was still focused on his phone. "Love," I said in a sweet voice. "What would you think if we tried something different?" He looked up, intrigued. "What do you mean?" I moved closer, touching his arm, seeing me with someone else, maybe two. His reaction was not what I expected. Instead of looking at me surprised or annoyed, he smiled. That smile puzzled me, but I interpreted it as a yes. I didn't know what, in his head. My proposal had already unleashed a series of plans that were about to change everything. I spent the rest of the day making sure every detail was under control. I sent messages to Elias and Hugo. I explained my idea, with a mixture of nerves and excitement. They both accepted without hesitation. Meanwhile, I teased Ismail every chance I got. I whispered in his ear what I would do to my friends, what they would do to me. I watched as his expression changed, as his eyes sparkled with something I interpreted as excitement. But that excitement was very different from what I imagined. When evening came, the three of them arrived on time. Elias with his typical confidence and there was with his calm but dangerous air. We sat in the living room while Ismail watched them from an armchair on the other side. The tension was palpable. I knew I was playing with fire, but that was precisely what attracted me. As we began, I didn't notice that Ismail had pulled out his phone. Everything was being recorded, every gesture, every sound. At that moment, I was the master of the situation, or so I thought. Your support is the only thing that keeps me telling this story. Subscribe and join me, because every detail matters and I can't do it without you. Like me if you feel this story touches you in any way and comment on what you would do in my place. I need you to stick with me, because this is just beginning. The night was at its most intense, the room lit with dim lights, and the tension in the air could almost be cut with a knife. I sat between Elias and Hugo, knowing that every movement, every glance, was part of a game I had started myself. Ismail was right in front of me, his phone propped in his hand watching us. I still didn't know what that look meant. In my mind, he was enjoying it as much as I was. His silence I took as approval. But come to think of it, there was something else in his eyes, something I didn't know how to read at the time. It all started with small touches, a soft kiss that turned into something more intense. I felt Elias' hands on my waist while Hugo caressed my neck. My breathing was accelerating with every second, and the most exciting thing for me was knowing that Ismail was watching it all. I turned my head towards him, with a defiant smile, looking for a reaction, but he was still, immutable, with that damn smile that I now understood as a sign of what he was up to. In a moment, I decided to take things to the next level. I stood up and approached Ishmael, leaned in close to him, close enough to whisper something to him that I thought would turn him on even more. "Love, I can't wait for you to see how these two make me scream tonight." But his response was puzzling. Instead of touching me or kissing me, he looked at me with that same controlled smile and said, "Make me proud of here." I laughed thinking he was playing with me. And I went back to the couch with my two lovers. Every movement we made seemed to rehearse a perfect choreography, kisses, caresses, looks full of desire, but what I didn't know was that Ismail was recording everything. Every second, every detail. In my mind, that night was mine. I was the one controlling everything, the one who was pushing three men to the limit, but the truth is that I was the one being managed. Hugo, with his firm but gentle touch, began to unbutton my blouse while Elias, more daring, slid his hands under my clothes. Each gesture ignited something else inside me. But it also ignited something in Ismail that I couldn't see. While my eyes were closed in pleasure, his eyes were wide open, capturing every detail across the bed. When I realized that Ismail had stopped recording to look directly at me, I thought he was finally going to join in or at least say something. I approached once more without caring about what was going on around me. "You like what you see," I whispered to myself with a smile, and at that moment, his response was as cold as a knife through my skin, more than you can imagine. It was the first time I felt a throb of doubt, but I quickly buried it, convinced that he was still part of my game. How much was I wrong? Do you realize what is happening? This story is not only mine, now it is also yours. I want you to follow me to the end, because what is coming will make you reflect. Like me if you perceive that the attention is reaching its highest point, and comment, because your words are the force that drives me to continue opening my heart. Subscribe now and join me because this truth needs to be told and you deserve to hear it. The room had become the stage for a game I thought I had under control. Elias was behind me, his hands exploring every corner of my body, while Hugo was not far behind, letting himself be carried away by the moment. But even though my attention was divided between them, my eyes were still searching for Ismail. I wanted to have surrendered him, trapped by desire, but the only thing I found was that impenetrable, calculating look. I didn't understand why he wasn't joining in. Was he enjoying himself or waiting for something else? I decided to ignore that pulse of doubt that was beginning to grow inside me. At that moment, Elias lifted me in his arms, carrying me towards the bedroom. Hugo and I exchanged a knowing smile, while Ismail followed him, recording every step, every gesture. I lay back on the bed while they continued their show for me. It was a moment full of passion, but Ismail's presence made it even more intense. I looked at him again looking for some reaction, but instead of desire I noticed something different. It was satisfaction. I didn't understand it at the time, but that look said it all. It was the expression of someone who was waiting for the perfect moment to act. Everything seemed like a fantasy. My laughter, the sighs, the heat in the air. But while Elias and Hugo took turns pleasuring me, Ismail did something that made my blood run cold. He turned off his phone and placed it carefully on the nightstand, with the screen facing down. Until that moment, I had assumed that his recording was to be enjoyed later, to relive every detail. But his gesture made me wonder, what was he planning to do with that video? The question hovered in my head, but the pleasure of the moment was still distracting. As the night wore on, the tension in the room changed. Something didn't feel right. Ismail got up from the chair where he had been sitting all this time. He walked towards me, and for a second, I thought he was finally going to join in. My heart raced. It was the climax of my fantasy, but number. He leaned into my ear and whispered something I will never forget. I hope you enjoy this because it will be the last time you will ever see me. He then walked out of the room, leaving the three of us frozen in place. I tried to get up, confused, but Hugo stopped me, thinking it was part of the game. I tried to pretend, but my mind was elsewhere. What did that mean? Why would Ismail say something so final? My instincts began to scream at me that something was terribly wrong, but I still couldn't connect the pieces. Hugo and Elias, oblivious to the storm raging inside me, went about their business, and I, as always, tried to keep up the facade of control. When it was all over, I went to look for Ismail, but he wasn't there. The house was empty, the air felt heavy, almost suffocating. My phone vibrated with a notification. It was a message from him. I hope it was worth it, Nerea. Because tomorrow everyone will know who you really are. My heart stopped. In that moment, I understood that not only had I lost Ismail, but I had unleashed something much bigger. My world, my control, my life, everything was about to fall apart. I know you are feeling what I felt at that moment. That mix of fear, confusion, and guilt. Like if you think secrets never stay hidden for long, and comment, because I need to know how you think I should have acted. Subscribe now and join me until the end, because there are truths that change lives. And this is one of them. My heart was racing as I held the phone in my hands. I read Ismail's message over and over again that I hope it was worth it, Nerea, because tomorrow everybody will know who you really are. My legs went weak and a shiver ran down my spine. What did she mean by that? What had she done? Before I could process it, my phone vibrated. It was Ismail. For a moment, I thought there was hope that maybe we could talk, clear things up. I answered, trying to sound firm, but what I heard left me speechless. Nerea, I just want you to know one thing before it's all over. Her voice was cold, almost distant. What are you doing, Ismail? What does all this mean? Component placement, I asked, trying to remain calm. His answer was direct, without a trace of emotion. I did it because I wanted you to feel what I felt when I found out what you were doing. I saw your messages with Elias. I read everything, even what you never dared to tell me. Do you know how long I've been putting up with this? But not anymore. My breathing stopped. Guilt burned through me, but before I could respond, he continued. You didn't just fail me as a partner, Nerea, you failed me as a person, and I don't just want you to know, I want everyone to know. Ismail, please don't do this. We can talk, we can fix it. I begged him, feeling tears running down my cheeks. But his tone didn't change. There's nothing to fix. And there's something else I want to tell you. You always ask me why I seem to enjoy seeing you with them. It's because it was never you I was really interested in. That sentence hit me like a brick. What are you saying? My voice was barely a whisper. I'm gay from Heredia, I always knew it, but with you I tried to be someone I wasn't. I thought I could love a woman. I thought I could love a woman, that I could love you, but all I really wanted was what they had. I was silent, unable to process what I had just heard. So this is my goodbye, I continue. I want you to be clear about something. This relationship was never real to me. Now, you can face the consequences of your actions while I start a life I really want to live. And with that, he hung up. I was left holding the phone, with a mixture of shock, anger, and sadness. My world had shattered in a matter of minutes. Ismail had cut all ties with me, and I knew there was no going back. The next morning, I awoke to the insistent ringing of my phone. Notifications, calls, messages. Every second of that night had been exposed to the world. My family, my friends, my co-workers, everyone knew. My sister called me, devastated. How could you do this in Heredia? Mom is crying her eyes out. My boss sent me a direct mail. Don't come back to the office. I felt my life falling apart. I knew I couldn't stay in Los Angeles. I packed what little I had and bought a ticket to San Francisco, hoping to find something that could be called redemption. In San Francisco I found a new beginning. I got a job as a graphic designer and met Fabian, a man who showed me what true love meant. Little by little I built a new life, far from the mistakes of the past. Together we formed a family with our 2 children, Amelia and Lucas. Looking back, I know that everything that happened led me here. I learned that pain can be a cruel, but necessary teacher. This is my story. And if there's one thing I can tell you, it's this. Never play with other people's emotions and never let anyone play with yours. Now you know how my story ended.